Alright, today we're gonna look at authentication. We don't want everyone to be able to access the admin panel and change stuff, right? We'll start with the API. The way it's gonna work is very simple. We'll have a new endpoint that expects login and password and responds with a token. Then other endpoints that are protected will only work with a valid token and the request header. First, let's create a new controller and add a new method that will accept credentials and check them. The way we check them is not very secure right now, we'll change it when we add a user model. If the credentials are correct, I want to return a JSON web token. For that, we need to install NestJs JWT library and add it to the model imports. Don't forget to specify the secret key here. And then we can add it to the controller's dependencies and use it to generate the token. The token will only hold the authenticated user's ID. Then we can use the token. We will use passport library to create a new strategy and an NestJs guard to protect our routes. In order to do that, we need to install a couple of packages. If you're interested about the details, there is an article in NestJs documentation that I used as a reference. Then create a new strategy. We'll pass the JWT as a bearer token. Use the same secret as before. Add the new strategy to providers and guard the appointments endpoint. Now, if we try to get appointments without a token, the request will fail. But if we log in and then set the token, it will work. That's exactly what we want right now. Now we can protect routes that modify barbers, services and images, and all appointments routes except the create one. We want unauthorized users to only be able to look at barbers and services and create appointments. By the way, I don't really like that we hardcode our secret and that we have to repeat it. A good practice is to set it as an environment variable. We already have a .env file created by Prisma, let's add our secret here. To use it, we need to install NestJs config and add it to the module imports. Now we can replace the strings with the variable. While doing all that, we kinda broke our admin panel. Let's fix it real quick. First, we need a login form. We already have everything prepared for making forms, so it should be easy. It's gonna have two text fields for username and password and the submit button. Let's also make a page component as a container for the form so we can center it. We don't want to see sidebar on the login page, that means we'll have to reorganize app structure. Let's make a React router switch that separates login page from everything else, and another one inside that processes other routes. Let's also not forget that app is a grid, and since we don't have a sidebar, we need the login page to occupy both columns. We are ready to implement the actual login. Let's think about it for a second. So we need a method to log in, another one to log out, and also a way to check whether we're logged in or not. And we want to be able to access all that from every component. For example, if we send an API request and it fails due to the token being invalid, we want to reset the login state. One way to do this would be to use a state library like Redux, though I think it's a bit of an overkill, especially since React has a built-in tool to do stuff like that called context. Let's see how it works. Creating a context can be a bit convoluted, but it's actually not that hard. So first we need to decide what values our context will hold. Functions that modify the context state go here as well. So in our case, it's the auth token and login logout functions. Then we just create a context. The default value here is the one that we'll get when we try to use the context with no providers and ancestors. We're not planning to do that, so we can just set it to undefined. We also need a provider component. It's a wrapper for the context.provider component React gives us. But we also can use state here and create the functions. We'll pass all that as values to the provider. Finally, we'll create a hook to access the context and export our custom provider and the hook. The next step is to wrap the app in provider. The problem here is that we actually want to use the hook here as well, so we can redirect the login page if the token is not set. But we can't do that because the app component is not inside the context provider. One way to solve this is to extract app content into a separate component and only leave stuff like providers here. Now let's do the redirect. And also let's make it so on the form submit, we set the token to some fake value and go to the main page. To actually log in, we need to create a new API method. By the way, I think I want to change the context a bit. I don't think I want to call the API from the context login method, so let's just set the token here. And the actual API call will happen from the form. After doing that, we can use the token. I'll update the API methods that are protected, so we can send the token in the header. And the corresponding queries and mutations will have to change too. To be honest, the way it's working right now is a bit sketchy. We should think about a proper way when we get to refactoring. But somehow it kind of works. You can only access the admin panel and protected API endpoints with valid username and password. Anyway, if we squint our eyes really hard, we'll see that the application is quote-unquote complete. And by complete, I mean it has the absolutely required features. So you can stamp MVP on it and ship it as early access version. In the next videos, I think we should slow down on big features and instead spend some time on making current ones not falling apart. So we'll work on cleaning up the code, stability, security, fixing bugs and stuff like that. So see you there, I guess. Thanks for watching.